I always believed our marriage was built on trust. Melissa and I had our share of struggles, but we always found our way back. So when she said she was flying to Denver to visit her old college friend, Emma, I didn't think much of it. I kissed her goodbye, told her to enjoy herself, and settled into my usual routine. But when she returned, something had changed. At first, it was easy to dismiss. The distant looks, the constant phone checking. She'd claim she was just catching up with Emma, but her clipped, guarded responses only fueled my unease. The doubt gnawed at me, growing stronger with every evasive answer and every late-night text she tried to hide. I kept telling myself to trust her, but the feeling that something was wrong had its claws in me, and it wouldn't let go. That night, while she slept, I broke a promise to myself. I opened her phone. My pulse pounded in my ears as I scrolled through the texts. David, a name I didn't know. He was a friend of Emma's, a friend Melissa had gotten very close to. Their messages dripped with flirtation and intimacy that turned my stomach. And worse, there was a plan. Tomorrow night. A hotel. Right here in town. The ground felt like it had vanished beneath me. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. Rage demanded action, but I needed proof. Undeniable proof. Tomorrow, I would catch them in the act. As I lay awake, my heart racing, only one thing was certain. After tomorrow, nothing would ever be the same. The next day felt like an eternity. I moved through it on autopilot, every muscle tense with anticipation. Melissa was her usual self, casual, composed. But now I saw every glance at her phone for what it was, a connection to him. She told me she had plans with Emma that evening, her eyes meeting mine without a flicker of guilt. But I knew the truth. The hotel was just 10 minutes away, a chain spot off the highway, discreet, impersonal. I arrived an hour early and parked where I could watch the entrance without being seen. My chest felt tight, my hands clenched on the steering wheel. Time seemed to stretch, every minute adding weight to my fury. Then I saw her. Melissa pulled in, and shortly after, another car. A man stepped out, David. I recognized him from the photos she'd sent Emma during her trip. My blood ran cold, and the urge to storm inside nearly overwhelmed me. But I held steady. I wanted no room for denial or excuses. I followed at a distance as they entered the lobby. The receptionist handed over a key, and they disappeared down the hall. My heart hammered. I recorded everything, his car, their entrance, evidence I'd need for what came next. I waited for what felt like an eternity before heading to the front desk. Calm but firm, I convinced the staff to confirm their room number. My body burned with adrenaline as I approached the door. My hand hovered, fist ready to knock or break it down. I knew this moment would destroy everything, but the truth demanded to be faced. Steeling myself, I pounded on the door. My fist hit the door with a force I barely controlled. The muffled sounds of surprise from inside only fed the storm raging within me. I pounded again, harder, my voice cold and sharp. Melissa, open it. The pause felt eternal, then the door cracked open. Her face, shock, guilt, and fear, said everything before she could. Behind her, David stood frozen, eyes wide with panic. The air in the room thickened, charged with tension that could shatter any second. You want to explain this? I said, my voice low, trembling with restrained fury. Melissa's mouth opened, but no words came. Her face drained of color, and her lips parted in a pathetic attempt to stammer out a lie. It's not. Don't. I cut her off, my voice like a snapped wire. I turned my eyes to David. And you? Who the hell do you think you are? He shifted back, hands raised slightly, but his silence only made my blood boil hotter. The room felt like it was collapsing in on us, every second stretching forever. Melissa, desperate, reached for my arm. Please, let me explain. I pulled away sharply. Explain? I have everything I need, I said, my phone in hand, recording the moment. You didn't just break my heart, Melissa. You threw away everything we built. Her face twisted, regret, panic, but it was far too late. The weight of her choices settled in her eyes. David, the coward, muttered something about leaving, but I stepped aside and let him walk out. He was never my problem. She was. I turned back to her, my voice quieter now but cold. I trusted you, and you betrayed me. The silence after those words felt endless. I turned and walked out, knowing that from this moment on, everything would change forever. I left the hotel, but the fire in my chest refused to burn out. My mind raced, and the cold night air couldn't cool my fury. My phone, still clutched in my hand, held the recording, the evidence I needed. But revenge wasn't my only priority. I had to protect myself from what was coming next. I drove aimlessly at first, the adrenaline making my hands tremble on the wheel. But soon, I found clarity. Melissa would scramble to cover her tracks. I couldn't let her get ahead of me. I called my lawyer the moment I pulled into our driveway. He listened in silence as I laid everything out, then gave me clear instructions. Secure bank records, property documents, anything that tied our assets together. Inside the house, it felt eerily hollow. Our life, suddenly a battlefield. I dug through the filing cabinet, pulling out every important document I could find. Financial statements, deeds, anything she might twist to her advantage. Minutes turned to hours, and then the front door opened. Melissa stepped in, her face pale from the confrontation. "We need to talk," she said, her voice raw with tension. I met her eyes, cold and guarded. "No, Melissa, we're beyond that." I slid the phone across the table. "I have everything I need." Her expression flickered from guilt to calculation. "It's not what you think," she began, but her voice cracked under the weight of her own lie. I cut her off, my voice steely. "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to finish this. You can't lie your way out anymore." The air between us felt charged, but I saw it in her eyes. She wasn't sorry. She was preparing for a fight, and I was ready. The house felt colder than ever, the air heavy with tension. Melissa stood across from me, her eyes burning with a volatile mix of panic and defiance. The silence between us was razor-sharp. "You can't just throw everything away," she said, her voice shaking. "You already did," I replied flatly. Her nails dug into her palms as she paced. "I made a mistake," she whispered, her voice raw. I felt laughter rise, bitter and sharp, but it stuck in my throat. "No," I said coldly, "you made a choice." Melissa's eyes locked on mine, flickering with something harder than regret. "You think you'll walk away with everything?" she challenged. I met her glare. "I'm walking away with what's mine." That night, I barely slept. My phone, still holding the recording of her betrayal, felt heavier than lead. I knew what was coming. This wasn't just heartbreak. It was war. At dawn, I met my lawyer, laying everything bare. We locked down my personal accounts, secured my digital assets, and froze the joint account. By midday, I found Melissa's lawyer's card on the counter. She wasn't wasting time. Neither was I. The first shot came fast, her lawyer's demand for half of everything. My lawyer answered with proof of her infidelity, a decisive weapon in a state where it mattered. Her retaliation followed, baseless accusations and threats of legal warfare. But my preparation left her swinging at shadows. Then came her call that evening, her number lighting up my screen. I let it ring. The battle had begun, but I was already winning. The pressure had been building for weeks, but now the battle reached its climax. Melissa's lawyer reached out with an offer, a so-called settlement that would divide everything equally. My lawyer, sharp and resolute, laid it out plainly. "You don't have to accept this. We have the upper hand." Melissa's desperation was showing through this sudden olive branch, but I felt no urge to compromise. "We don't settle when we're winning," I said firmly. The legal war intensified. Depositions, filings, encounters flew back and forth. Melissa's accusations became wilder, but my documented proof dismantled every claim. The courtroom exchanges were tense, each word a weapon, every fact a shield. Her lawyer strained to salvage a crumbling defense, but my team pressed with precision, making every inconsistency glaring. Then came the final blow, a revelation from her own financial records. Hidden accounts, evidence of her siphoning funds from our joint assets. It wasn't just betrayal, it was theft. The courtroom shifted, and even her lawyer's confidence drained visibly. The judge's expression hardened. By the day's end, Melissa sat stone-faced, her mask cracking under the weight of her own deceit. Outside the courthouse, my lawyer shook my hand. "It's almost over," he said. I nodded, but the victory felt cold. I hadn't fought for revenge. I'd fought for truth, for what was rightfully mine. I stared up at the sky, feeling the winds of change. The storm wasn't quite over, but the tide had turned. The end was in sight. The courtroom felt both cold and stifling. Weeks of battle came down to this moment. Melissa sat stiffly across from me, her expression a mask of icy resolve. The judge, stern and measured, cleared his throat before delivering the decision. In light of the evidence presented, he began. "The court finds in favor of the respondent." The words hit Melissa like a blow. The ruling was clear. I retained ownership of the house and the lion's share of our assets. Her infidelity, deceit, and financial misconduct weighed heavily against her claims. Melissa's lawyers shifted awkwardly, knowing they had lost. She shot me a look, pure venom, mixed with something else, disbelief. The gavel fell. I walked out of the courtroom feeling the tension in my chest finally begin to ease. My lawyer caught my arm. "You held your ground," he said. "It paid off." Outside, the sun felt warmer than it had in weeks. Melissa passed me without a word, her face cold, her pride shattered. But there was nothing left to say. The fight was over. I drove home, the house now truly mine. The emptiness inside didn't feel hollow. It felt like possibility. A message lit up my phone. "Melissa. Just 3 words. You'll regret this." I didn't reply. Some battles aren't about winning. They're about knowing you stood your ground. And I had. The house was stripped of her presence, but the echoes of the past still lingered. I moved from room to room, absorbing the silence that felt more like a void than peace. The fight was over, but its scars remained. A message flashed on my phone. "You'll regret this." "Melissa." I let the screen darken without a reply. Regret was her burden now, not mine. The following days brought a strange mixture of relief and restlessness. Friends reached out, some to support, others to pry, but I kept my responses brief. I wasn't ready to explain the exhaustion that sat deeper than words. With the legal battle behind me, I focused on something I had neglected for too long, myself. I poured my frustration into long runs and my confusion into late-night journaling. I even found solace in the unexpected, reorganizing the home, discarding the remnants of a life that no longer existed. It wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. One evening, I stumbled on an old box of mementos from the early days of our relationship. Instead of anger, I felt something else, acceptance. The happiness we once shared had been real, but so was the ruin that followed. And now, I carried both truths without bitterness. As I stood on the porch, the cool night air brushing against me, I felt it. The first hint of clarity, the first breath of freedom. The past no longer controlled me. The house wasn't just a reminder of a battle fought. It was a symbol of a life reclaimed. And the future was mine to write. The sun crept over the horizon, casting a soft glow through the windows of the house. My house. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt the air inside shift, no longer heavy with the past but lighter with possibility. Life began to take on a different rhythm. Mornings were mine, filled with quiet reflection and coffee brewed for one. I rediscovered long-forgotten passions, books that gathered dust, trails waiting to be explored. The world felt new, but so did I. Work became more than just an escape. It became a source of pride. Without the tension that had clouded my days, my focus sharpened. Projects moved forward, and opportunities opened up. My phone buzzed often, congratulations from colleagues, invitations from friends I had neglected. Slowly, I stepped back into the world, this time on my terms. The loneliness I feared became something different, solitude. And in that solitude, I found peace. One crisp evening, I crossed paths with someone new, unexpected but intriguing. A simple conversation, easy laughter. I felt no urgency, only curiosity. I wasn't rushing toward anything. I was simply open to what could be. Melissa's shadow no longer loomed. Her threats, her bitterness, those were her burdens to carry, not mine. I had no room for anger. My life was no longer defined by what I had lost, but by what I was building. And what I was building felt real. As I stood on the porch, the sky painted in twilight, I felt it. This wasn't an ending. It was the start of something entirely new. The dust had settled, and life had found its new shape. The chaos, the courtroom battles, the heartbreak. It all felt distant, like a story that belonged to someone else. But the lessons it left were mine forever. Melissa's name rarely crossed my mind until one final message arrived. "You ruined my life." I read it once, then deleted it. There was nothing left to say. She had written her own ending. I was living my new beginning. The house, once a battlefield, felt different now. Warmer. Alive. I had filled it with pieces of me. Photos from hikes, shelves lined with new books, and laughter from friends who brought joy, not judgment. I continued building the life I deserved. Steady, purposeful. My career flourished, not from escape but from passion. And with each passing day, the bitterness faded, replaced by clarity and hope. One crisp autumn evening, I found myself on the porch, sharing stories with someone who made me smile effortlessly. It felt natural, unrushed, real. I wasn't searching for what I had lost. I was embracing what I had found. The past no longer had power over me. It was a chapter, not a sentence. As the stars emerged, I felt it deeply. I hadn't just survived. I had grown. I had won. Because true closure isn't about revenge or regret. It's about peace. And I was finally free.